My mother-in-law stole our dog after breaking into our home. Me, 28F, and my husband Jack, 30M, have been together for 6 years, married for 3. We've always had a pretty good relationship, with the usual ups and downs, but nothing too major. That is, until my mother-in-law Carol, 55F, came into the picture. From the start, Carol has been overbearing and controlling. She constantly criticizes the way I keep our home, the way I dress, and even the way I cook. She's always trying to insert herself into our lives, giving unsolicited advice and making passive-aggressive comments. Jack has a hard time standing up to her, as she's a master manipulator and has a way of making him feel guilty for not catering to her every whim. A few months ago, we made the decision to get a dog. We both love animals, and thought it would be a great addition to our little family. After doing our research, we settled on a golden retriever puppy from a reputable breeder. We named him Buddy, and he quickly became the light of our lives. Carol, however, was less than thrilled about our new furry friend. She made it clear from the start that she didn't approve of us getting a dog, claiming that it would be too much work and that we wouldn't be able to handle the responsibility. Whenever she came over, she would complain about the dog hair, the smell, and the noise. One day, Jack and I came home from work to find our front door wide open and Buddy nowhere to be found. Our hearts sank, and we immediately started searching the neighborhood, calling his name and asking anyone we saw if they'd spotted him. After a couple of hours of frantic searching, we received a call from Carol. In a sickly sweet tone, she informed us that she had taken Buddy to her house because she didn't think we were taking proper care of him. She claimed that he had been wandering the street and that she was just trying to keep him safe. We were furious, but also relieved that Buddy was with Carol and not lost or hurt. We told her that we were coming to pick him up right away, but she refused. She insisted that he was better off with her, and that she would be keeping him for his own good. Jack tried to reason with her, but she was adamant. She even went so far as to accuse me of being an unfit pet owner, claiming that I didn't have the nurturing instinct to properly care for a dog. It was clear that she had no intention of giving Buddy back to us. We decided to go to Carol's house and try to retrieve Buddy in person. When we arrived, she met us at the door with a smug grin on her face. She refused to let us in, claiming that we were too emotional and that she didn't want us to upset Buddy. Jack pleaded with her, reminding her that Buddy was our dog and that we had every right to take him home. But Carol was unmoved. She insisted that we were irresponsible and that she was doing what was best for Buddy. The situation quickly escalated, with both of us raising our voices and Carol becoming increasingly defensive. At one point, she even threatened to call the police if we didn't leave her property. In a moment of desperation, I tried to push past her and get into the house to retrieve Buddy myself. But Carol shoved me back, causing me to stumble and nearly fall. That's when Jack stepped in, getting between us and telling his mother that she had gone too far. Carol played the victim, accusing me of attacking her and claiming that she was just trying to protect Buddy from an unstable woman. Jack tried to reason with her, but she wouldn't listen. She just kept repeating that she was doing what was best for the dog, and that we were the ones who were being unreasonable. Eventually, we realized that we weren't going to get through to her. Defeated and heartbroken, we left her house, unsure of what our next move should be. For the next few days, we tried everything we could think of to get Buddy back. We called Carol repeatedly, only to be met with silence or more insults and accusations. We even went to the police station to file a report, but they told us that since Carol had taken the dog with the intention of caring for him, there wasn't much they could do. We were at our wits' end, and the stress was starting to take a toll on our relationship. Jack was torn between his loyalty to me and his desire to keep the peace with his mother, while I was becoming increasingly resentful of Carol's manipulative behavior. One evening, we received a call from Carol's neighbor, who had witnessed her taking Buddy and wanted to let us know what had happened. According to the neighbor, Carol had gone out of her way to break into our house and take Buddy while we were at work. We were shocked and outraged. Not only had Carol stolen our beloved pet, but she had also broken into our home to do it. This was a clear violation of our trust and our rights as homeowners. Armed with this new information, we went back to the police station and filed a formal report for breaking and entering, as well as theft. The officers were much more sympathetic this time, and they agreed to pay Carol a visit and try to retrieve Buddy. When the officers arrived at Carol's house, she refused to cooperate. She denied breaking into our home and claimed that she had simply rescued Buddy from neglectful owners. The officers warned her that she could face charges if she didn't return the dog, but she remained defiant. With Carol refusing to cooperate, the officers had no choice but to obtain a search warrant. A few days later, they returned to her house and forcibly entered, eventually finding Buddy cowering in a small utility room. Carol was arrested and charged with breaking and entering, theft, and animal cruelty, for the conditions in which she was keeping Buddy. We were relieved to have Buddy back, but the ordeal had taken a massive emotional toll on all of us. In the weeks that followed, we had to deal with the legal fallout of Carol's actions. She was released on bail and pleaded not guilty, claiming that she had simply been looking out for Buddy's best interests. The case dragged on for months, with Carol's lawyers trying to paint us as unfit pet owners and Carol as a concerned grandmother who had only wanted to protect an innocent animal. It was a frustrating and emotionally draining process, but we were determined to see justice served. In the end, Carol was found guilty on all charges. She was sentenced to 6 months in jail and ordered to pay restitution for the damage she had caused to our home, as well as for Buddy's veterinary bills. He had lost weight and was suffering from anxiety due to the ordeal. While we were relieved to have the legal battle behind us, the emotional scars ran deep. Jack was devastated by his mother's actions and the realization that she was capable of such deceit and cruelty. For me, the experience had shaken my trust in people and left me feeling violated. I had always considered our home to be a safe haven, but Carol had shattered that illusion. I found myself constantly on edge, jumping at every little noise and struggling with anxiety and insomnia. Jack and I tried to work through our issues, but the strain on our relationship was immense. We went to counseling, both individually and as a couple, but the damage was done. We eventually made the difficult decision to separate, realizing that we had both changed too much to continue our marriage in a healthy way. Looking back, I can't help but feel a sense of sadness and loss. Not just for my marriage, but for the trust and innocence that Carol's actions had robbed us of. Buddy is doing well, and we've both made efforts to move on with our lives, but the scars of that experience will always be with us. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that toxic family members can be just as dangerous as strangers, and sometimes, the only option is to cut them out of your life completely. While it's a painful decision, it's often necessary for your own well-being and self-preservation. Break story 2. Me, 28F, and my husband, 30M, have been together for 5 years, married for 2. We live a relatively comfortable life in a modest home we bought a couple of years ago. My husband works in IT, and I work as a receptionist at a local doctor's office. My in-laws, let's call them Linda, 55F, and John, 60M, have always been a source of stress in our relationship. They're the kind of people who think they're always right and that their way is the only way. They're also incredibly materialistic and judgmental, constantly criticizing our choices and lifestyle. Despite their flaws, we've tried to maintain a civil relationship with them for the sake of keeping the peace and not causing unnecessary drama. That was until the incident with our beloved dog, Buddy. Buddy is a 4-year-old golden retriever that we've had since he was a puppy. He's an absolute sweetheart and has been a constant source of joy and companionship for us. We love him like he's our own child. About a year ago, my in-laws started making comments about how we spoil Buddy and that we should be more strict with him. They insisted that their way of training dogs was superior and that we were doing it all wrong. We tried to brush off their unsolicited advice, but they wouldn't let it go. They kept pushing and pushing, claiming that they knew better because they had dogs when my husband was growing up. A few months ago, we went on a week-long vacation, and my in-laws offered to watch Buddy for us. We were hesitant at first, but they assured us that they knew how to take care of him and that he would be in good hands. When we returned from our trip, we noticed that Buddy seemed a bit off. He was more timid and skittish than usual, and he wouldn't come near my father-in-law, John. At first, we chalked it up to him just being confused after being away from us for a while. But then we started noticing other signs that something wasn't right. Buddy started having accidents in the house, something he hadn't done since he was a puppy. He also became more aggressive towards strangers, growling and barking at people he used to love. We took him to the vet, thinking maybe he had a urinary tract infection or some other medical issue, but the vet couldn't find anything physically wrong with him. That's when we started to suspect that something might have happened while he was staying with my in-laws. We decided to confront Linda and John about Buddy's behavior changes. At first, they denied anything out of the ordinary happening. But after some pressing, John admitted that he had been using tough love techniques to train Buddy. Apparently, he thought Buddy was too spoiled and needed to learn who was boss. So, he resorted to methods like hitting Buddy with a rolled-up newspaper, spraying him with water, and even kicking him when he misbehaved. We were absolutely horrified and disgusted. How could they do that to our beloved pet? Linda tried to downplay John's actions, claiming that it was just old-school training methods and that we were overreacting. She even had the audacity to suggest that we should be grateful that they took the time to properly train Buddy. My husband and I were livid. We immediately cut off all contact with them and forbade them from ever being around Buddy again. We knew that their toxic behavior and abuse had traumatized our poor dog, and we weren't going to let them continue to harm him. But the confrontation didn't end there. My in-laws didn't take our decision well at all. They started sending us a barrage of angry texts and voicemails, accusing us of being ungrateful and overreacting. They even threatened to take legal action against us for alienating them from their grandchild, referring to Buddy. We stood our ground, though. We made it clear that their behavior was unacceptable, and that we wouldn't tolerate any form of abuse towards our beloved pet. The situation only escalated from there. A few days later, we came home to find our front door wide open and Buddy missing. Panic immediately set in, and we frantically searched the house and the neighborhood, but there was no sign of him. We called the police and filed a report for a missing pet, but deep down, we had a sinking feeling that my in-laws were behind Buddy's disappearance. Sure enough, a few hours later, we received a call from John, demanding that we drop all charges against them and allow them unlimited access to Buddy if we ever wanted to see him again. We were absolutely beside ourselves. Our beloved pet had been essentially kidnapped by my own in-laws, all because they couldn't handle being cut off for their abusive behavior. The police advised us not to give in to their demands, as that would only encourage them further. They assured us that they were working on tracking Buddy down and that we would be reunited with him soon. In the meantime, the emotional toll of the situation was almost too much to bear. We couldn't sleep, we couldn't eat, and we were constantly on edge, wondering if Buddy was okay and if we would ever see him again. Days turned into weeks, and still no sign of Buddy. The police had hit a dead end, and my in-laws had gone completely off the grid, ignoring all calls and messages from us and the authorities. We were at our wits' end, feeling helpless and defeated. That's when we decided to take matters into our own hands. Through some digging and a little bit of luck, we managed to track down an old acquaintance of John's who might have information on Buddy's whereabouts. It was a long shot, but we were desperate. We met up with John's acquaintance, a shady character named Steve, at a local bar. After some persuasion, and a little bit of cash, Steve finally spilled the beans. Apparently, John had been keeping Buddy at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, using it as a makeshift kennel. Steve had seen him taking bags of dog food and supplies in and out of the place. Armed with this information, we immediately contacted the police, and they raided the warehouse. Sure enough, there was Buddy, scared and malnourished, but alive. My in-laws were arrested and charged with pet theft, animal cruelty, and a host of other offenses. They tried to plead their case, claiming that they were just trying to rescue Buddy from our neglectful care, but the evidence was overwhelming. In the end, they were both sentenced to several months in jail and ordered to pay a hefty fine. They were also slapped with a permanent restraining order, prohibiting them from coming within a certain distance of us or Buddy. While we were relieved to have Buddy back and to see my in-laws face consequences for their actions, the legal battle took a significant emotional and financial toll on us. The court proceedings were long and drawn out, with my in-laws fighting tooth and nail to avoid punishment. They even tried to turn things around on us, accusing us of being the neglectful ones and claiming that they were just trying to protect Buddy. Of course, their arguments held no water, and the judge saw right through their lies and manipulative tactics. Still, having to relive the trauma of Buddy's kidnapping and the abuse he endured was incredibly difficult. In the end, justice prevailed, but the scars from the ordeal would take a long time to heal. Even though Buddy was physically back home with us, it was clear that the trauma of his experience had left him changed. He was more anxious and skittish than ever before, jumping at the slightest noise and cowering whenever my husband or I raised our voices. We sought the help of a professional dog behaviorist, who worked tirelessly with us to help Buddy overcome his fears and regain his confidence. It was a slow and often frustrating process, but gradually, we started to see glimpses of the happy, carefree Buddy we knew and loved. As for our relationship with my in-laws, it was essentially non-existent. We cut all ties with them, unwilling to risk subjecting ourselves or Buddy to their toxic behavior ever again. Looking back on the whole ordeal, it's hard to believe that it all stemmed from a disagreement over how to train a dog. But I suppose that's just the kind of people my in-laws are, controlling, manipulative, and willing to go to extreme lengths to get their way. While the legal and emotional aftermath has been tough, we've found strength in each other and in our love for Buddy. He's the one who kept us going through the darkest times, and we're forever grateful to have him back safe and sound. To anyone else dealing with toxic family members, my advice is this: don't be afraid to set boundaries and cut ties if necessary. Your mental health and well-being should always come first, even if it means sacrificing relationships that are causing you more harm than good. And to my in-laws, if you're reading this, you may have won a battle, but you'll never win the war. We're a family now, and no amount of manipulation or cruelty will ever tear us apart. /